I'm Riley Chow of Gold Derby here with Luca Giliberti and Zach Laws, and we are now going to be talking about the drama races at the 2020 Emmys. And the drama races are quite competitive this year. I think you could probably fill the category twice over with legitimate contenders because everybody came back after the disastrous final season of Game of Thrones. All these shows took the year off. Then Game of Thrones got worse reviews than it ever had before, and the joke was on them. Having said that, I'm not sure that many of them actually could have beat Game of Thrones, or maybe any of them, but getting off on a tangent here, and I've only been talking for 30 seconds or something. So at the top of our odds, we've got Succession, followed by The Crown, and then we have Better Call Saul, Ozark, Big Little Lies, The Handmaid's Tale, and Westworld. And then lurking just outside Gold Derby's top 7, we've got The Morning Show, Killing Eve, The Outsider, Mindhunter, Stranger Things, Hunters, Pose, and This Is Us. You can tell how competitive it is because This Is Us ranks down in 15th, even though it has not missed. And there's not really much reason to think that this season will do much worse than the other ones based on the quality of the season, that kind of thing. It's just a heavy competition. So where to begin? Do we feel that Succession is definitely winning this, or I don't know. What do you think, Zach?
As of right now, I would bet, this is pre-nominations, obviously, and a lot can change after that, but I would be willing to bet out of like a 90% certainty that Succession is going to win.
90%, wow.
90%. Yeah.
Like even after the creative arts, I'm usually not at 90%.
I know. I'm filled with hubris right now. The kind of hubris that makes you win big. Here's why. I mean, what Succession has that I think all of these other shows are sort of lacking in the kind of amount that Succession has is positive buzz. You know, it's a zeitgeisty show. It's a show that everybody's talking about. Now we saw it performed okay in the kind of precursors that we look at. It won the Golden Globe for drama series and for Brian Cox. Got completely skunked on the other hand at SAG for its second season, but performed well at the Guilds, and could, I think, with the absence of Game of Thrones, I think it could dominate a lot of those acting categories. And certainly I think it will return in writing and directing and possibly pick up a few texts as well that it missed. Remember, I mean, this show already has won 2 Emmys for its first season. And I think largely it won those 2 Emmys because the second season was airing while they were voting. And the second season was an improvement over the first. And people really started to talk about it more and to watch it more. Other than that, I mean, I think its closest competition is perhaps The Crown, which, you know, is an Emmy-winning show, feels like a brand new show because it has a brand new cast. Took a year off, like you said, Riley, and has come back to great acclaim. Other than that, I mean, a lot of these shows, I think, are just competing to get nominated in this very competitive field. One that I would look out for, not necessarily to win, but to overperform, would be The Morning Show, which a lot of people wrote off after its first 4 episodes, got kind of middling reviews. But the buzz did get better as it went along, and it did overperform in terms of the Golden Globes and SAG, winning an award for Jennifer Aniston, which I think a lot of people assumed would go to Olivia Colman. So I kind of have that in third place by default, just because I don't know what else other than Succession and maybe The Crown I could see possibly winning. Because, again, everything else is just, it's kind of like pick your own adventure with what scenario, with what combination of 7 you can come up with.
Yeah, The Morning Show I don't have in my top 7, but I really like that you have it because I have it winning 2 acting awards, which is maybe an impossible thing to do if you don't have a series nomination. Yeah, sorry, Luca.
No, all good, all good. I'm not predicting the morning show because I don't think it's the type of show the TV Academy likes to reward anymore. It was very popular toward the end. There were a lot of people talking about it. It overperformed at SAG. Those 3 nominations are very important because SAG doesn't reward shows that just recently aired. They usually take a year or even 2 years to even latch on to something. As we saw with Succession, it still hasn't been able to get a single SAG Award nomination. So those 3 awards for Billy Crudup, Steve Carell, and Jennifer Aniston are very important, especially looking at this race. And the momentum the show had, especially for that final episode, which I think was undoubtedly the best episode of the season, is also very important. But we don't see these type of shows recently get in at the Emmys. It's, even though it has a very important or touches on a very important subject matter, it's still very, at times soapy. Sometimes it's a bit over the top. It's very loud. For me, it's almost, it's similar to a network show in some aspects. And I just can't see the TV Academy going for it, especially in a year of so many prestigious dramas returning, or, such dramas being the race at all, which is why at the moment I don't have it in, but that doesn't mean I, will keep it out of my lineup. If Westworld season 3, for instance, just bombs, or if Ozark season 3 bombs, I could easily put in the morning show because I could still see a part of the TV Academy, voting for it. But at the moment, I have to stay with my other contenders, and I agree about Succession. It's last year's Fleabag in the drama series race in this case. It's a show that has all this passion, and I did not predict the show to get nominated for SAG. I did not predict it to win anything last year, and even I'm saying this year, I'm pretty sure it's going to win drama series. The 3rd season of The Crown was respected, and, personal feelings aside for me, I just don't see the passion for that 3rd season. I think the first 2 seasons had more passion than this. There were a lot of expectations for this 3rd season, and I don't think they met all those expectations. They won SAG Ensemble for the first time, but I don't see it surpassing Succession with all the buzz that it had last year and has had throughout the last year.
Yeah, Succession is not quite the full package, which is maybe why I wouldn't put it at 90%. It does have that passion. It won the Producers Guild, won the Golden Globe, Critics' Choice, Writers Guild, but, shut out by SAG, not nominated by the editors for either season at the Guild or at the Emmys, nothing in cinematography. So it seems to have, a ton of passion in some places and just to be non-existent in others, which is kind of the flip side of the morning show. And the morning show seems to have deep support among the actors, but it couldn't get nominated by any other guild. So I could see it coming in like This Is Us has done in the last few years, where, This Is Us was also not nominated for its ensemble at SAG its first year, but then as soon as it was nominated the next couple of years, it won. And, it got Sterling K. Brown in that first season at SAG. So that's an example of a show where the actors branch has kind of just carried it single-handedly to the Emmys. So I can see that happening with the morning show. Yeah, sure.
There's 2 points I'll make about Succession and the morning show. First of all, with the morning show, there is no limit to the amount of money that Apple will spend to get their show nominated. And not to say that they're bribing Academy members, but we know that places like Netflix and HBO, they have Amazon, they have these deep pockets that they can dig into in order to just blanket this town with FYC. And obviously, I think the morning show is going to benefit from the fact that, Apple has the ability to do that. They're able to keep it in the conversation that way. It's just like with the presidential election. If you have the money to campaign, you're going to have a leg up over the competition. And in regards to Succession, like I said earlier, it really benefited in its first season Emmy wins by having the second season air at the same time. This was the strategy that Mad Men used for all the years that it was winning. It would always air in the summer when voting was underway. So I don't know what the date on season 3 of Succession is or how close they are to completing it. But if you're HBO and you're really wanting this to win, I would say you're looking at getting it into that summertime slot that they had last year in order to keep it in the public mind, keep voters aware that this is a show that they really love, so that it's not overshadowed by some of these programs that we haven't seen yet because they haven't aired yet. They're waiting until the springtime in order to be really fresh in voters' minds. That's the other thing that makes this so hard to predict, is that season 5 of Better Call Saul just started airing. It's very good. We don't know if it's going to stick the landing yet or not, but we can maybe guess. We don't know how season 3 of Killing Eve's going to be. We certainly don't know how season 3 of Westworld's going to be. Are they going to be able to keep that quality up the way that they have in their first seasons and be able to sustain to be able to get into this very competitive race?
Yeah. I think what you mentioned, or go ahead, Riley.
Oh, something I think that bodes well for Succession is that we did see it go from a snub to a win at places like the Producers Guild and the Golden Globes. So I wonder if maybe like the Actors Branch, for example, was just a few months behind, but now that it has all this buzz from those awards wins, then maybe we could see it get a ton of acting nominations, even though we haven't seen that support thus far.
Yeah. And I think, Zach, what you mentioned is very important for Succession, is that HBO will have to, sort of build its momentum while the show's on hiatus, or, keep the momentum. And I think another network that needs to do that, or streamer in this case, is Hulu with The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale finished its run in August, which is a long time ago. Are you guys predicting it? Because I am. I'm not.
I am, actually.
You are. Okay.
I am, because it got the second most Emmy nominations of any show last year for 3 seasons, 3 episodes of a season that had aired over a year ago at that point. I feel like I have to predict it.
Yeah,
I didn't like that it fell out of the Producers Guild and the Directors Guild.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What I think we could say to that is that Watchmen took up a lot of those slots, and I'm not saying The Handmaid's Tale would have replaced it, but
I think it would have actually. But
yeah. But I think it's important for Hulu because the 4th season just started production yesterday, or today actually, and finishes, I think, around August, late August, and probably won't air until the fall, which means it won't have the benefit that it had last year, which is that it was airing right when people were checking off their ballot or marking off their ballots. So they at least need to drop some kind of trailer, or they need to remind people what happened in the 3rd season, because by the time they vote for the nominations, it will have almost been an entire year since the last season started. I do have it in because even though it missed Producers Guild and Directors Guild, it still got into a lot of other guilds. It won the American Society of Cinematographers again after it lost the year before, and it was still able to get into a lot of guilds. And I do think it would have been able to get into Producers and or Directors Guild if Watchmen had already been in the limited series category. Plus, it got that SAG Ensemble nod, that 3rd consecutive SAG Ensemble nod. It got a nomination for Elizabeth Moss for the 3rd time in a row. It got the 2nd most nominations last year. It got into categories it didn't need to get into. And while the 3rd season was pretty rocky, it had some episodes that were lackluster, to say the least, but it ended on an incredibly high note, which I think is seen as one of the best episodes of the series by many of its fans, or many of the people who watch it. And I'm not saying it'll carry it all the way to, the drama series nominations, but I feel like it's more of a favorite than a lot of people will give it credit for, within the TV Academy at least.
Well, and by the way, I mean, not only did it get those 11 nominations, but it won 3 awards, including 2 for acting. I could see, like, Bradley Whitford, he's now in the supporting category for this. I could see him very easily getting nominated and even possibly winning in that category, now that Peter Dinklage isn't there, and there's no clear frontrunner. But again, you're right, Luca. They have to find a way to remind people that it's in there, and that's a problem for a lot of these shows. That's a problem for Pose, which aired almost a year ago and isn't coming back until June, I believe. So they've got to find a way to keep that top of mind. It's a problem for Big Little Lies. Absolutely, it's a problem for that. That's why I don't have it in right now, because 2nd season, kind of mixed reviews, will have aired well over a year ago. And I think HBO has got other priorities with Succession and Westworld coming back. Something like, and The Outsider, which is their new show, something like Big Little Lies could fall by the wayside and just get nominated for some of its actors like Nicole Kidman or Meryl Streep or even Laura Dern, you know. But even then, we don't know if they're going to really remember it, especially since it doesn't look like there's going to be a season 3 from what we know.
And it underperformed at SAG, which is the most surprising thing that happened, because although it got the ensemble nomination, it didn't get in any of its actresses. And we're talking about Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman and Laura Dern. I could see a scenario, since it is such a, you know, cast full of, female actors, I could imagine that they may have split the vote, but it doesn't bode well for its chances here. And that's actually the show I'm most worried about at the moment, just because that second season was not, first of all, it came and went so quickly. Those 7 episodes, they flew by. Then the Andrea Arnold news hit the internet and sort of, left a lot of people not very happy with this show. And then a lot of people didn't like the ending. I love the ending, but I know a lot of people that didn't. And I just felt like it lost so much buzz that it had from that first season. And that's the show I'm most worried about at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand that Succession is coming back in the fall, so it'll just need a trailer or whatever.
So much for that. So much for my theory.
Yeah, you mentioned The Outsider, and that's one that I feel pretty good about right now, before we see the finale. Just because that one seems to have this incredible audience response, where most episodes have gotten better ratings than the week before, which is a hard thing to do in general. So it seems like this show has very good word of mouth. It has an 8.7 on IMDb, which is very high. It seems like it could just be like the HBO equivalent of Ozark, where it doesn't get the best critical reviews, but it seems to have this great audience response. This show is also produced by and directed by Jason Bateman, who has a supporting role. Well, it's actually guest eligible, but HBO is submitting him in supporting. And then Ben Mendelsohn, he's the lead. He won an Emmy unexpectedly a few years ago. Cynthia Erivo, she is the female lead. She's in supporting. She just got nominated for 2 Oscars. So this show, I feel like, has a lot of things going for it. Richard Price, he's the showrunner, nominated a couple of years ago for The Night Of. So that show I've got in my 7th position. One that I had in my 7th position a couple of years ago was Mindhunter, which I did not understand how that just made no impact with awards, since it seemed to have a lot of the same things going for it that The Outsider has now, and that it was very well received by audiences. It seems like it was widely watched, and it seemed like it had the pedigree and subject matter that would make it palatable to Emmy voters. It was about serial killers, of course. But anyway, the second season finally did break through with awards somewhat, in that it was nominated by the Writers Guild and also the American Cinema Editors. So maybe the industry was just a little slow on it. But yeah, that's a show that I feel like not a lot of people dislike. So if you have a choice on your ballot between nominating it and not nominating it, I think it could happen.
I sure hope so. I mean, I love Mindhunter, and really broke my heart when it didn't get any Emmy nominations in its first go-round. The second season, I think, was even more acclaimed than the first one, and I think a lot more people discovered it than they did the first season. So it's only grown in viewership. So I hope that, Netflix, they have a lot of different priorities. Certainly, I think The Crown is probably at the top of their list, along with Ozark, in terms of what they're really pushing out there. And then they have things like Stranger Things as well. So I really hope that doesn't get lost in the shuffle, and that even if it can't get into drama series, which, considering how competitive it is, it might be a hard hill for it to climb, I hope at the very least it can get in for like a writing nomination or directing or one of these craft categories. I mean, it's such an incredibly well-made show. And you got people like David Fincher working at the top of their game on it. I really hope that it doesn't get overlooked again.
Yeah. And the two genre shows that could be in the running, we have Westworld, and of course we have, I mean, obviously The Outsider could also be considered genre, but we also have Stranger Things. I'm a bit surprised by how Stranger Things is so low in our odds after, it almost won for the first season, we presume, and still got 12 nominations for its second season. It got that SAG Ensemble nomination again. It got in for David Harbour. David Harbour got into SAG again. It's another show that aired last July, and we're talking about early July. We're talking about Netflix dropping all its episodes at once, which means that, it was in the zeitgeist for about 2 weeks, but then after that, no one really talked about it for the rest of the year, let alone the beginning of this year. It's a show that I could still see break into, the directing category with that season finale, for instance, which was a big spectacle. I could see it getting all those tech nominations, and honestly, it deserves all of those tech nominations. The third season looked gorgeous, but it's very surprising that it's so low in our odds now, and just speaks to this huge time gap between the last season, or between the eligible season and the actual voting. And then we also have Westworld. Westworld got 22 nominations for its first season, 21 for its second. It's always been a show I think we've underestimated. The third season comes out in just 2 weeks. We've seen the first trailer. It looks very action heavy. I don't know if the TV Academy will necessarily gravitate toward that, if it is indeed what the trailers have shown us. And to the writers and whoever, selects the submissions, please don't, put 500 different writers and directors on the ballot. It cost them the nomination last time in both categories. I'm hoping that they submit wisely this time around, and that they focus on, 2 to 3 people there. So that's my big hope for Westworld, because I think it could have maybe even taken one of those categories 2 years ago.
Yeah, they do have Jonathan Nolan directing this season. He was the showrunner who was nominated for the first season. He didn't direct last season, so I think that certainly bodes well for them there. In terms of Stranger Things, I think it just kind of crossed over from being this awards show to kind of more what The Walking Dead became, and that it still seems to be widely watched and vaguely liked, but it's not intending for those.
Yeah. And I guess another show that, or Zach, did you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead. You go first. I was going to mention something else entirely different.
I was just going to mention Pose, which you did mention earlier, which is another show that got in last year. I probably, very much underperformed last year, even though it got drama series and it got Billy Porter and a few other nominations. It's a show that, again, the second season aired last summer, a second season that wasn't all that well received, which had standout episodes, but just as a, the season as a whole just didn't receive good reviews. And I fear it will be forgotten in the shuffle this year with all these shows in the mix. The same with This Is Us, which, as Riley said, there is no reason for it to fall out. The fourth season has been pretty great, has been, on par with at least the first 2 seasons. And it just shows how much competition there is this year. We could easily fill 10 to 15 slots, and it would still be a very normal race for us.
Yeah, I mean, with Pose, it did win for Billy Porter last year, and I think there's a lot of residual goodwill towards him at the very least. Whether or not it translates for the show, and that could have very easily been a show that might have performed better had Game of Thrones not been in the race, taking up all of those different slots. We'll never know. Certainly, I think there's a specific voting block of the Academy that show really appeals to, and I think that we shouldn't underestimate them continuing to vote for it. But we'll see. It is ranked very low in our odds just because of how competitive it is. We haven't even talked about some other brand new shows that I think are just not even going to be in this race at all. I mean, The Mandalorian is ranked 15th or 16th. I can't tell. This is Disney Plus's first play, but I have a feeling that maybe that'll get a couple of tech nominations and be viewed as, if we're looking at Stranger Things as being too kind of silly for them, I can't see them taking The Mandalorian, a Star Wars series, that seriously when they have so much competition to choose from.
Okay, let's talk about who we think is going to win in the acting category. So I've got Jennifer Aniston and Billy Crudup, as I said, for the morning show, and then I have Tandy Newton, and I think my maybe biggest upset prediction for now is Jason Bateman in the lead actor category. Just because I figure that, as much as we all think that Brian Cox or Jeremy Strong will win, I don't see how either of them can if both of them are there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all different from you, Riley, which should come as no surprise. Not because I think those are bad picks, but I think it's just speaks to the competition of these categories. I do have Brian Cox winning for right now. I think that of the two Succession men, he has proven to be the most voter friendly, let's say. I mean, he does have like the biggest, showiest performance of the two, whereas Jeremy Strong's is a bit more subtle, which might make him in danger of not getting nominated at all. We'll see. I have him in right now because I think the show is going to do well overall and he'll get carried in by that. I'm picking Olivia Colman right now, but I could just as easily see it being Jennifer Aniston. It's going to be a neck-and-neck race between those two, with one winning the Globe and one winning SAG. So I want to see how their respective shows perform overall in the acting categories. I have Bradley Whitford winning right now, but I'm not 100% certain on that. This is a guy who just, the Academy really loves him. I think he's won, 3 Emmys now, 3 or 4. I should know this as an expert, but I can see somebody on YouTube right now commenting on this. I'm not at all confident about this pick, but I'm throwing a dart at the wall and picking Helena Bonham-Carter, even though she couldn't win the Golden Globe or SAG. But then again, maybe she'll benefit from their being a little less, I don't want to say competition, but a little less of a clear front runner, even though it could just as easily be Julia Garner again. We'll see when season 3 of Ozark comes out.
Yeah. I also have Olivia Colman winning Best Actress. I could absolutely see this going to Jennifer Aniston. And depending on how many nominations the morning show gets, I might actually predict her in the end. I think she gives the showiest performance. I think Olivia Colman, there were a lot of expectations leading up to her performance in the 3rd season, especially after she won the Oscar for The Favorite. And she was great. She's Olivia Colman. She's not going to turn in a underwhelming performance, but I just not sure that this is the year that she will win for. I think if she gets even better material next year, she might give a bigger performance, and a performance that garners more buzz and gets her that first SAG award. Whereas Jennifer Aniston, her character, she plays such an interesting character, and she has so much material to sink her teeth into. And I think Emmy voters might absolutely love what she does on the show. In Best Actor, I have Brian Cox, which is just an early prediction, just because he won the Globe. But Riley has a point with Jason Bateman. He was probably in second last year, or second or third. I could also see Bob Odenkirk finally winning, if Better Call Saul can ever win an acting Emmy or an Emmy at all. So in the supporting categories, I have Yvonne Strahovski winning Supporting Actress, which is a bold prediction. But I think she could follow in Tandy Newton's footsteps, which is lose for the first time she's nominated for her show, then build up a bunch of goodwill, and then win the second time around. That, however, depends on how many co-stars of hers are nominated, or whether any co-stars are nominated. If Ann Dowd is nominated, and Samir Wiley, who's also eligible in supporting, if both of them are nominated again, then her chances are very slim, because we could see the same thing happen to her that happened 2 years ago, when she was nominated alongside 2 co-stars and therefore maybe lost. But if you watch the 3rd season, there's no way you're not going to vote for both her and Ann Dowd, at least for a nomination, which is why I have both of them in. And in Supporting Actor, I have Bradley Whitford just as a default frontrunner because he won Guest Actor last year. He's, practically the male lead in the 3rd season. He gets a lot of material he got to dive into, and his character becomes more sympathetic toward the end, which is also good for him. But I could see Billy Crudup taking this too after that all-important SAG Award nomination.
And he won the Critics' Choice Award. Okay, so please log on at goldderby.com to make your own predictions.